Welcome to Reflections, a program where we discuss values and virtues for the transformation of the individual and the society in general. I am Father George Ehusani, and I have with me in the studio Catherine and Agai. Catherine, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Father.
Catherine is a veteran in the civil society. She worked with Usiwa, Open Society Initiative of West Africa, before reorganization, right?
Yes, sir.
And now you're a researcher. Tell us about, you're a researcher at the University of Sussex.
Yes, Father. So I'm a researcher at the Institute of Development Studies at the University of Sussex. I started about a year ago. I'm right now at my field work stage, so I've been going around interviewing people and gathering data for my research, trying to understand my research question a little bit more and learning from the organizations.
You're a PhD student.
I am a PhD student.
And your research is on what exactly?
So my research is, broadly speaking, on behavioral science and international development, but specifically I'm looking at the role of behavior change approaches in anti-corruption projects in Nigeria. So I'm using MacArthur Foundation projects as case study for my research, which is an interesting topic because MacArthur Foundation project is one of the very few around the world that is experimenting using a behavior change approach to understand corruption and to address corruption, and no less in a country such as Nigeria.
The behavior change approaches came along with the behavioral insights.
Yes.
That a number of psychologists came up with in the last decade or so.
Yes.
What are elements of this behavioral insights?
So when you start looking at the topic of behavioral science itself and behavioral change approaches, you can date it back as far as you want to, because many people say it started within the field of health, for instance, where people were looking at how to engage people who were living with disorder, for instance, and trying to get people to live more healthier lives. And so you introduce an element of behavior change into their lives, teach them about, their what they can do, believe in self, for instance, to try and make change happen within your own life. But more recently, there was a rise of behavioral science within economics, so behavioral economics, where people started thinking that, wait, people are not really as rational as we thought they are, that people are irrational human beings, that a person can set out to say, I want to do this, and fail to do it because a person has the intention, but then the action. So they started trying to understand, what is it about human behavior that the Homo economicus has not understand as the normal economic human being who is rational, who takes rational choices, rational decisions. What is it about that person that we don't understand? And they started thinking that, okay, people act based on biases and heuristics, so people don't really always behave according to how they intend to. And so you now try to understand those biases, why are people behaving, whether it's attention bias, inaction, or different kinds of biases.
I am into psychology as a student of psychology, and I have known, and many psychologists have always known, that the so-called Homo sapiens, that the human beings behave more from emotions than from rationality. We think that we are rational, but that actually we behave more from our guts. Our gut feelings dictate more of our behavior than our rational feelings.
Indeed.
And there's been a lot of discussion about that. But let's come back to the whole issue of you say you are experimenting with the MacArthur projects and MacArthur grantees that have been engaged in integrity, fighting corruption and promoting integrity.
Yes.
What have you found out as perhaps the reason for people's bad behavior in our country? When it comes to, I call it bad behavior, that is to say, corrupt behavior.
Yes.
The lack of integrity, which appears to be across the board.
Yeah. So maybe let me take it a step back to maybe share why I decided to embark on this research to start with. So when in 2016, I attended a executive education course at Harvard, where the very first behavioral insights and public policy course was held. And when I went there, I was interested in it because I was coming from a context such as Nigeria, and I was just thinking of the ways that, when policy is when policy is passed, when the government designs policy, it seems as if they don't really take the behavior of citizens into account. And so I was interested in finding out what is it, about how government can act in a way that, they engage citizens more when they're trying to design policy. And when I went to that course, what I realized was that it was so different. The examples were so different. So what they were talking about, some of the examples that they were giving was, there was a huge, one of the examples they were giving was a huge pension problem they were having, where people were not signing up to their pension plan. It was available, but they weren't just signing on to it. And then they realized that because you were giving people the option to sign, they were forgetting to sign because people don't always remember. People have competing problems. And so they now said, okay, why don't we default them into signing? So they don't really, which is another, they don't really give you that option. But the
default is that
you sign. And so they now found that the enrollment went really high. So that was one of the examples that we're giving. Another classical example we're giving was about choices, the way you put choices in front of people. So if you want somebody to eat something, you put it in front of the person. So you give the person a healthier option, the person will take. You put the unhealthy option behind, and the person will find it difficult to reach out. And I said, well, it seems as if people are already having an easy life, and you're trying to make it even easier for them. But for this one, within our own context,
where you are coming from,
people are having a difficult life, and the people who are central to make this life easier are even the ones making it more difficult. And here I am trying to understand, how do you move government to act in the best interest of its citizens? While in this situation, it was like the government was trying to find more ways
to make life easy for the common good.
So you can already see that was my first challenge. So when I asked, do you have any examples from Africa? And I started realizing that the examples we're giving were of actors such as yourself, civil society actors, other international actors who were filling in the gap for actually what the government is supposed to do, and now trying to find ways, to make people engage and involved in, those programs. And so that was what led me to say, what is it about this behavioral change approach and trying to address anti-corruption in Nigeria, when some of the examples I could see from outside Nigeria really did not have a lot to do. Yes, it's
with our context. Yes.
With our context, yes, it is to do with human behavior, but human behavior in a totally different way. And so I set out, I designed my questions, and I was looking at the lens I chose to look at it from further is the lens of power. Understanding power as agency, that a person has the capacity to act, but also understanding power as structure. That means that there are structures and institutions that mediate behavior that already sort of pre-establish how a person can behave. So there's that tension between a person's individual agency to act and then the structures within which they act. Now, different people, theorists of power, have different ways to say it is about agency, is not about structure. And some say it's about structure, not agency. And that is the debate that I'm also really trying to resolve within this research.
I mean, this is very interesting for me, because in recent time, I have actually become quite frustrated about the context. Meaning the Nigerian context within which we are working. That a lot of people in this country today who are corrupt, a lot of people who misbehave, quote unquote, misbehave, if they were in Singapore, they will not misbehave. Yeah. Because apart from personal agency, there is structure. And the sanctions that await people who misbehave are such that you will not be encouraged to misbehave. But because of the absence of the appropriate sanctions in this country when people misbehave, in fact, right now there appears to be reward for misbehavior. Whether it is in politics or in economy or whatever, there appears to be reward for misbehavior. Yes, so it's very interesting that apart from the personal agency,
Yeah.
I am a Christian. And because I am a Christian, there are certain things I can't do because I won't sleep well. Yes. My conscience will not let. That's personal agency. Yeah. There is also supposed to be a structure in place that disallow me from misbehaving, and the sanctions will come. I mean, drive around Abuja and jump red light. Chances are 9 out of 10 chances you won't be caught. Yes. Now, you can't do that in the UK. Yes. You can't do that in the US. That's structure. Yes. So where do this come to play?
Yeah. So indeed, there's the tension that exists between the agency and the structure. That is the individual's ability to act, and then those things, those institutions in place that moderate that behavior. And what different people are saying is that outside of a revolution, for instance, how do we get people to act differently? And some people are saying, well, yes, it is both a top-down and a bottom-up approach, that maybe, we could model the behavior. We could show people what society could look like, what society could be like differently. The interesting thing about modeling the behavior is that what I've seen that organizations are doing is they're not just equipping people, giving people knowledge, giving people information about what they can do differently. They're also trying to set up the systems where people can, so if you have a problem, where you can go and report, and then even supporting you with the ability to go and report and trying to see you through the process of reporting to get resolved. Now, ordinarily, some of these things are things that the government or other actors should be doing. But then civil society actors are filling that gap of trying to get citizens to behave in a particular way. And what I've found so far is that it's a huge
thing. Can you imagine a society of 200 and more, 217 or so million people, and you have local governments, state governments, federal government with various agencies. Yeah. If you have a rogue system, as we tend to have, a rogue system, a rogue state, where those who superintend the system are in large measure dishonest, crooked, many of them have got into positions in crooked manner. Yeah. What civil society is trying to do in this country, or civil society groups are trying to do, is it's like a drop in the ocean. Indeed. Indeed. And unfortunately, it is a painful thing to say that nothing short of a revolution will change, make any significant change. Because I'm asking myself, as long as those who are benefiting from this rogue system, as long as they do not recognize that it is not sustainable, they will continue. They will continue to nurture this kind of rogue system. Yes. So, in terms of what you are studying about human behavior, what can, agency, little individuals, we do our little best, but what else can we do to avert a violent revolution if things are to change in this society? What can we do to avert?
So the thing is about, individual behavior, but what I'm hearing a lot from the people I'm engaging with is about mobilizing collective action and collective behavior as well, saying that if we move sufficient enough people to place a demand, that there will be response. And I think that was also sort of the concept, that because part of my own position, my positionality as a researcher is I was also working with a donor organization. And I remember that at that time, what some of the things that we're trying to do was in terms of the demand and supply side of accountability, that if you push the demand side and you make people demand, then there might be a supply of accountability. Now, whether that always happens is a totally different thing, but then have we pushed that demand bit? Have we tested that system enough? Because another part of what I'm also finding is, because of the role of the power asymmetry, people are powerless in the face of corruption. there's also that resignation of probably there's nothing that we
you
can
cannot
do.
blame people who resign.
No,
You see,
yes.
in the last 1, 2, 3 years, for example, the accountant general of this country, one after the other, one acting accountant general, one actual accountant general, we are told one is 110 billion stolen, one is how many billion stolen. Then a country where somebody finishes as governor of central bank today, and for how many months is in detention, accused of corruption. Then you have somebody in charge of EFCC, and for 3 months removed from office, and for 3 months is in detention, accused of corruption. That is enough to make people resign. That there's not much we can do about it. So you are talking of a, like I said, of a rogue state.
Yes, indeed.
And I see something terrible coming to upturn the whole thing, unless those who mean well for this country, unless they do something urgent and drastic.
Yes. So I think that, a term that a lot of other actors that I speak with talk about is that whole idea of an elite consensus. That if you push society to a place where society is pushing back, in your own interest of self-preservation, you begin to give things, you begin to give away those parts of your power that you're holding on to. So you cannot continue to be rogue in your own enlightened self-interest. That means that to preserve your own self, then you must give something to
When
society.
are we going to get to that point where there is sufficient enough? I mean, we heard the present president Tinubu talk about elite of the elite. He was talking about oil thieves. He was talking about those who are benefiting from subsidy. And he says a few elite of the elite. Who are these elite that don't know about enlightened self-interest?
Yes,
Who are they that they don't seem to know what is called enlightened self-interest? That my people have a saying that the tick, this pest, parasite that infests a goat, does not seem to know that when it kills the goat, it dies with the goat.
Indeed.
Now, who are these elite parasites in Nigeria who do not know that when they suck the Nigerian organism to death, that they will die with the organism?
Indeed, Father. And I think that these are some of the very tough questions, because one would think that by now, the leadership would have been seeing the signs that you can't just continue like that. There is just so far and so much you can push people before people push back. And I think consistently there has been that build-up of restlessness amongst the people. You can see that the people are asking more questions, demanding more, and saying that, look, we're not going to keep taking this for another long period of time. We're not going to be as patient as the people before us. We're going to do more. But it seems like there's some kind of comfort within power.
I think
within this,
I think they are exploiting something.
Yeah.
The elite of this country are exploiting our religious and ethnic divide. Clannish divide.
Yeah.
That's what they are exploiting. Because in every place you can always get, he's a thief, but he's our thief.
Yes, indeed.
He's a rogue, but he's our rogue.
Yeah,
when your brother was there, did I complain like this? Why are you so noisy about my brother? Yeah. Now, they are exploiting that, but I think they should be warned that there is only an extent to which you can continue this.
Yes.
It will get to a point. Yeah. It almost got there at NSAS.
Yes.
Now, it will get to a point, and none of us can predict when that will happen, the tipping point.
Yes, indeed.
Where they will no longer, you can no longer keep exploiting their religious and ethnic sentiments.
Yes, I think that this point that you just made as to when something radical will happen or change, it's just unfortunate that we don't know when the tipping point happens. But it always happens as a combination of different factors. And when you look at it, all those factors are in place. But it's just that what triggers that, point.
We can't predict it.
You can't predict it. But then all the elements of that sense of frustration, sense of restlessness are in place. And if the government has any interest in preserving itself, if the elite, have any form of sense of self-preservation, I think that they should begin to listen to what the people are saying.
It is at this point I will say you actually face that camera. And help me speak to the Nigerian elite.
This one?
No, this one. You actually, I'm talking of whether it is religious elite.
Yes, indeed.
All those who are benefiting from the rotten system, yes, from the status quo. This is the time I would like you to speak to them, because I'm sure you have in your studies, you are reading history, you are reading how societies change, yes, not by design but by default when things happen. Help me speak to our elite of the elite, that we can't continue like this.
Yes, indeed.
That if they have enlightened self-interest.
Yeah. So, Father George and I have been talking about behavior change. We've been talking about corruption. We've been talking about the behavior of citizens. We've also been talking about the way that it seems citizens have been powerless in the face of corruption and a rogue state. And what we're seeing is that the rise of restlessness amongst the young people and even across society, that this rise of restlessness, along with hardship, along with other economic factors, that they're pushing people to a tipping point. And in the interest of self-preservation, that the elite in this country, that the leadership in this country has to listen and has to do something about it. If not, there's a tipping point that the country is getting to, and we don't know how it's going to end. We don't know how it's going to go. But that if the government is interested and if the government wants to preserve its own self, then it must listen to the people and make change happen within the country, because we so desperately need it.
Thank you very much. Having discussed that, let me ask you, you are schooling at Sussex. You were in this country for many years before you traveled. What is the school system and organization and order? What is it compared to what we have here?
Father George, it's like night and day, unfortunately. The kind of support that I get from the school, so whether for my work, whether it's in terms of technological support, whether it's in terms of moral support, whether it's in terms of interest in my research. So I have guidance. I have two supervisors. One is Professor John Gaventa, who is a researcher, and he is one of the influential people on the theories of power, and he is in his 70s, but he always takes out the time to read my work, to give me feedback, timely feedback, and to support me. And when I talk with other PhD students here in Nigeria, it's such a radically different experience. Now, my research, because it's on development, and I've had about over close to 15 years in development. When I got there, they were treating me as an expert. Yeah. And there was no come and do coursework. It was come and share with us from your experience what you know, and let us learn from you. This was an over 70-year-old man with his over 50 years of experience in his own area of research, and telling me, I need you to teach me about what you know so that I can also learn from you.
Because what you knew in the field is useful.
And so with that, they said, you know what, you already have the experience, you have the knowledge, you have the concepts in place. All we need from you is just to polish your research skills.
Structure your research.
And that was what I did for the first year, just structuring the research, honing in on my methodology, the research questions, and then just sending me off to the field with that, confidence that you know what you're doing.
So, one of the problems they have in Nigeria is that you begin this kind of PhD and you never really know when you will finish. Oh, you have an idea when you will finish.
I do have an idea, and it's also really dependent on you. What they just say is that it's a minimum of 3 years, because for you to really show to put yourself into it, you can't do it less than 3 years. So it's a minimum of 3 years, and then anything after that is up to you. So you determine the pace at which and you go. I had an experience with one of my fellow students who is doing her own here in Nigeria, and they said they set an exam for them, and the first exam was that you should write your chapter 1 of your research, and this was her first exam, and I can't understand it. How does somebody, what is the rationale
for writing a chapter that you have not, have they discussed the proposal? Have they?
You know, so come on. So for me, you know, it's just the experience is so different, unfortunately.
I do hope that as you go and have this kind of rich experience, that you are coming back, that you will not japa, but that you are coming back to continue working in this space of development and use this rich experience to help us move forward, especially to help us with regards to behavior change, because we really need behavior change, not only on the ground level, but behavior change in the level of the elite, religious, political, economic elite. And I pray that God grants you success.
Thank you.
And that the society of the next few decades will be better than the last few decades in this country.
Amen.
Catherine,
Amen,
it was wonderful talking with you.
Really nice
and
talking to you.
have a very successful research period in Sussex, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Father. Thank you.